Hi, good morning, everyone. Hi, good morning, everyone. Um, this meeting is being recorded and we posted on the CCDH website. For those of you that were unable to attend, you can see it on the website. And then also we will be looking to possibly put the presentations up on that website also. So first of all, I guess I'm Christine Sosko. I am the chair of the CCDH Emergency Response Committee. And Christy Anderson is also the other co-chair. She's unavailable to attend today due to emergency response of the deep fire, but I want to acknowledge her. And then I just wanted to say I'm very excited to have this opportunity to host the debris management for disaster response workshop today. And then before we begin, I want to thank our state agencies for taking the time out of their busy season to share their information with all of us. We're really fortunate to have them with us. Today we have Jason Baitzer and John Elkins from Cal EPA. We have Baylor Kartika from Cal OES, Heather Geldart, Courtney Hart, Jeremy Edwards, and Kevin Sokol from Cal Recycle, Sada Yurbadi, Michelle Peterson, and Alex Shubik from CDPH, and then Ivan Rodriguez and Denise Tuji from DTSC, and they're all with us today, and we really appreciate this. So in addition to that, I just want to take a moment and give a giant thank you to Cheryl Baldwin for her tremendous support in organizing this event, and also Marie Wooden, who has continued to support CCDH and the ER committee in her retirement. So this workshop was created in response to several questions that were being asked about disaster debris programs. People were asking about how those programs are currently being structured, along with questions about how can they prepare their local agencies for a disaster debris program, and then what kind of resources and technical advice and stuff is available for us in the future. So I thought this information is really timely, right now as we're facing not only wildfire debris programs, but we've been facing hurricanes, mudslides, floods, earthquakes, all these other types of disasters that do create debris. So I'm really excited to have this opportunity to come together today and have this discussion. So just quickly before we start, a couple little housekeeping. So hold your questions until the end of the presentation, and then we'll facilitate a panel discussion at the end. And then also make sure to log in with your name and agency so that we can create a list of attendees. And then with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Jason Baitzer with Cal EPA, and he's going to give us a state of the state, and then we'll start our workshop. So Jason, take it away.
Thanks, Christine. And yes, a state of the state from a Cal EPA perspective, but thank you to you and Christy and Marie for pivoting and getting this workshop together in short notice. And of course, as you mentioned, Cheryl, thank you for your undying dedication and commitment. When we ask, you deliver. So thank you. A model of an emergency management and event planning of Cheryl Baldwin. So, and also thank you to all that are here and listening. I know all of you have busy schedules implementing existing environmental and public health regulatory programs. And that's important, and something that I always, being a former director myself, stress to our state agency partners, federal partners, so that all of you have day-to-day operations that you're implementing outside of the emergency management programs. But I think we can all agree that, since when I first entered environmental and public health in 1999, we've definitely seen an evolution of emergency management programs, as Christine mentioned, from fires, floods, atmospheric rivers, earthquakes, extreme heat events, extreme snow, etc., impacting, all of our jurisdictions in different ways, and has caused us to really, having to add emergency management to our existing environmental and public health programs. So thank you to all of you that are dedicated to continue to protect public health with your existing programs and being able to pivot on a short notice with limited resources at the local level, and commit, and being committed to your communities. We are seeing the impacts of climate change unfold before us, with an increase in intensities and frequencies of these wildfires, severity of drought, changes in weather patterns, bringing the historic rains this last year, heat waves. And so really, successful emergency management is critical now more than ever. And just to kind of share the perspective, and I got this off of OEHA's website prior to this, as I was preparing some other documents. In 2020, smoke plumes covered every county for at least 46 days. By contrast, from 2010 to 2014, only 11 counties had at least 46 days on average each year. So, and we know a record high 4.2 million acres burned in 2020, and several large wildfires burned at once, leading to unprecedented air quality impacts. So I know today we're talking about debris, but there's all these other impacts of public health that we work with our other local agencies and state agencies, and recognizing that, and the impacts of emergencies to our communities. Also understanding that no single organization can respond effectively to large-scale outbreak or disaster on their own. And that's why we are here as a state to partner with all of you, understanding all emergencies start local and end local. But on the other hand, good coordination means we can leverage the particular strengths of each partner organization, share resources, avoid duplication, close gaps, and reach more people. I think that's key. And I know with our current leadership, administration, ensuring that we are reaching all communities in everything that we do. Under the continued leadership of Cal OES for all emergencies and disasters, and the continued partnership across all state and federal agencies, we at the state are poised to support all of you. And so again, that's why we're here today, to help answer those questions on debris management program. Also, as part of our priority within Cal EPA and the administration, we need to ensure that recovery efforts and process recognize and address those communities that are most affected by many sources of existing pollution, and where people are often especially vulnerable to pollution's effect and disasters, exasperating those impacts, and understanding that each disasters impact each community differently. And that's where we look to all of you to help us guide in our recovery efforts. So as our programs continue to evolve, we need to ensure the principles of equity, inclusion, and accountability are built into our processes. Very important. And you'll be, I've been saying that over the last couple of years, but continuing to mention that. And so I just want to, again, thank everybody here. I'm going to turn it over to John Elkins to highlight a few things that we are working on in Cal EPA with our state and federal partners, and in our preparedness. We're in this wildfire season. I think to date, Baylor can correct me if I'm wrong, we have about 223,000 acres burned. I think around 33 structures destroyed. As Christine mentioned, the northwest part of the state is currently being hit with wildfires. And sometimes, when we're away hundreds of miles, it may not seem like there's emergencies taking place within the state, but they are. And we see that, we understand that at the state, and stand poised to support all of you. So again, thank you. Look forward to the leadership with Cal OES and Cal Recycle, and we have our DTSC partners also here to help answer any phase 1 questions, along with CDPH and for their presentations. So thank you to all our partner agencies, and look forward to a good workshop this morning. And John E., I'll turn it over to you for a few specific Cal EPA updates.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Jason. I'll keep my remarks pretty short because I do want to get to the meat and the meat and potatoes of this workshop. So a couple of things that we are working for. Jason kind of said that alluded to the fact that we may be in wildfire season currently. I don't think we ever get out of wildfire season anymore. I think 2 years ago we had wildfires in December and January. So that just kind of shows that, you know, wildfire season never really goes away in California. And we do, what Christine said, we deal with hurricanes now, we deal with floods, we would deal with droughts, we deal with wildfires, we deal with all these overlapping and consistent emergencies. I remember I've been doing emergency response for over 2 decades, and I remember in the good old days when we only had to deal with one emergency at a time, one hazmat spill, one fire, one earthquake. Now we have a wildfire on top of an earthquake, on top of a flood, on top of drought, on top of a hurricane coming hitting the Pacific coast. So we have these layering levels of emergency responses, and it's the collaboration and the cooperation between people like everyone on this call, whether you're presenting or you're listening. It's that collaboration, that communication that makes California, that allows us to push California back into a pre-event status quicker and helps people in California get better to pre-event status, and that's what we do. So a couple of things that we're currently working on in Cal EPA. We're continually leaning forward to improving our emergency response plans and procedures. One of the currently things we're working on is our GIS, and we are working with our with all our BDOs, board department offices under Cal EPA, to currently create a hub that all the databases will plug in, so that at the State Operations Center, when we plug into the State Operations Center as Emergency Support Function 10 with hazmat and environmental issues, we can pull that information a lot faster and a lot quicker, and we can get that information to the people in the field who need it. Another thing that we're currently working on is the prevalence of lithium-ion batteries and what to do with lithium-ion batteries. The emergency response within lithium-ion, because this is an emerging technology and it's a new technology, the technology has greatly surpassed our emergency response procedures. And we've been, for the last year and a half, we've been looking to see what to do with like a car fire that happens on the side of the road. But now, actually, with the prevalence of people putting lithium-ion batteries as power packs at their homes for backup power generation, along with more electric cars coming on, how's that going to affect the wildfires? How is that going to affect phase 1 with household hazardous waste, and phase 2 with debris removal at the house during or post wildfire? We're currently working with US EPA, DTSC, and Cal Recycle to try to get some policies and procedures together, so that when the first we are in wildfire season, but when the first major one hits for this year, we'll be a little bit more prepared, and we'll have everyone working on the same page. Again, we are continually trying to push our programs forward. We're continually trying to forecast and lean forward to try to figure out what are some of the issues, emerging issues. GIS is definitely one of them, and definitely lithium-ion batteries is another. Like Jason and Christine have already kind of said, I'm going to push it again. If you ever have any questions, we are here 24/7. Please feel free to reach out. We do plug into the State Operations Center. We are that kind of hub. So please reach out when everything happens. And I'll throw it back to you, Christine.
Great, thank you. Really appreciate everything. And now I'm going to go ahead and move this over to Baylor Cortica and Heather Geldart. Baylor is with Cal OES, and then Heather is with Cal Recycle, and they have a combined presentation that they're going to give us for disaster debris removal operations. So I'm going to go ahead and click it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing and let you go ahead and bring up your presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody. We're very happy to be here. Give me 1 second to get this shared here. Can everyone see it okay? Let me obviously go into presentation mode. Can you see that okay? Okay, perfect. All right. Well, real quick, just want to do a formal introduction. Good morning, everybody. My name is Baylor Kartika. I'm with Cal OES's debris operations. I'm a senior emergency services coordinator. We work very close in conjunction with Cal Recycle, our friends at Cal EPA, DTSC, and various all state agencies here out of Mather, up in Sacramento. With that, Director Gelder, do you want to introduce your team real quick before I kind of roll into the presentation?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Baylor. Good morning, everybody. My name is Heather Galdart. I'm the Deputy Director at Cal Recycle, overseeing the disaster and debris recovery operations. With me, I have three of my team members joining. We have Courtney Hart, who is our engineering geologist. We have Jeremy Edwards, who oversees our field operations. And we have Kevin Sokol, who oversees our project management branch. Thank you, Baylor.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to roll through our presentation here. There may be various questions near the end. Hopefully I address most of them as we go through this, but please, I'm looking forward to a Q&A after this as well, if there's anything else that pops up. So with this is our disaster debris removal operations and how the state, in conjunction with Cal Recycle, would do a debris removal program if it was state-led as opposed to county-led. Let's see. There we go. All right, so just our agenda here. We're going to go over the introduction, the operational overview of how debris operations are conducted via either state or county. They're both basically modeled after the same. We'll do our pre-incident models, and then basically we'll go over technical assistance, what the state can provide, counties want to do it themselves, et cetera, and as well as resources that OES and Cal Recycle, EPA, and DTSC can all provide counties to assist in their own debris cleanup. All right. Let's out of the way here, excuse me. Okay, so introduction. Debris removal is a standard component for disaster recovery. As most of you know, recovery is the largest portion of any disaster. Response is something that it happens here and now, and then recovery is the rest of the year. So it all starts with debris removal for a survivor that's lost anything. So this accounts for 40% of all the costs for any disaster throughout the our incident period. Debris removal includes basically hazardous debris from basically home burning, anything that would affect public right of way, with vegetation, obviously with trees burning. These are things that during an uncontrolled wildfire, they create toxins and things that get in the air, in the dirt, that ultimately affect public health and safety. And these are all the foundations to get these removed to start the rebuilding process for any community that's been affected. All right. So I will go over a little bit over phase one, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn it to Ivan, because I'm sure he's got quite a little bit more technical question or technical details that I will skip over. So, okay, so the first step for any debris removal program, whether locally led or state led, is the phase one program. So this is the hazardous household waste removal. This occurs immediately after the disaster has gone through, and it's safe for our crews and our staff to go in there and do so. This is executed in pursuit with the local health officer's declaration of emergency. So there's no requirement for basically a property owner to allow our staff to go onto the property to remove this hazardous household waste, because it is a public health emergency, and that gives us gives DTSC and their contractors the right to go onto the property under an urgency ordinance, if you will, to remove this waste immediately before it affects public health as a whole. So what this entails, when the crews go on there, they'll basically remove, as you can see here, any easily identifiable bulk asbestos, batteries, paints, e-waste. I know, as Jason was saying earlier regarding the Tesla batteries and whatnot that are on houses, as well as vehicles, as electric cars are becoming more and more popular. These are all things that in an uncontrolled fire that they are immediate hazard, identifiable hazard to the staff and our crews and our people. So I'm going to pause there. Ivan, I will turn it to you real quick, good sir, if you would like to add some details for what your crews do when they're on location.
I'm sorry, I had to step out for a minute. Was there a question for
Oh,
DTS?
no, I just, if you have any amplifying information regarding what your crews do during a phase one cleanup during our disaster debris removal.
Yeah, so the phase one, the DTSC, the assessment that we do is assessing for household hazardous waste that's been impacted by the fire. And in this case, we look for, we first do an initial health and safety kind of sweep of the property. We go onto the sites with our contractor. We have contractors throughout the state, 6 separate zones or areas where we have primary contractors. So we do go onto the scene with our contractors. They do an initial health and safety screening using monitoring instruments for our own personal safety. And then we go ahead and do a couple of things with our assessment. One is we usually have a certified asbestos consultant with us. That individual's main goal and purpose is to identify any potential debris that has asbestos-containing materials in it. So that individual will go through and identify that material, and if it's found, it's marked with we use the pink color of spray cans to mark those items that could be potential asbestos-containing. And then we have a hazardous materials crew that goes through and assesses for household hazardous waste. Now, a lot of the times, most of the household hazardous waste is fully consumed by the fire. So sometimes there is, where there's liquids, they're usually, again, all consumed by the fire. But what we do find, the majority of the waste that we find during our hazardous HHW assessment is batteries. The lead acid batteries from vehicles, from boats, from motorcycles. Those are typically, it's interesting when you see a battery, we know what it looks like, but when you see it in a fire, the first times I went to a fire, I had no idea what a burned battery looked like. But if you can imagine that the plastic covering is completely gone, all the acid inside is gone. What you have is, it looks like these looks like a book sometimes almost. There's these, the lead plates that are there are, once you've seen a burned battery, you know how to identify a burned battery. But anyways, burned batteries, compressed gas cylinders, paints, aerosol cans, whatever hasn't been fully consumed by the fire that can be left as debris, our contractors will identify those, then we'll remove them for disposal. We also have with us a asbestos removal contractor. So as the certified asbestos consultant identifies the potential asbestos-containing material, if there are some items that we can readily move that are easily accessible and readily removable asbestos items, we will do that. But we by no means attempt to clear each site from all of the asbestos there. That is beyond our capability, and so we leave that to the phase 2 operations. So any questions at this point?
Ivan, I really appreciate the detailed context for our phase 1 operations. So thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Okay, well, moving on forward. So once the phase 1 operations are complete and the initial hazardous household waste has been removed, we will roll into basically this will be the start of our phase 2 operations. So phase 1, hazardous household waste removal. Phase 2 is actual physical debris operations, and that all starts with a site assessment. So where I'm going to go with this is, so a site assessment for PPDR, private property debris removal. This is an opt-in program, okay? And we'll kind of go over this a little bit later on in the presentation. So this is a voluntary program that the property owner will basically go and they'll sign an authorized letter, a right of entry form for us and our contractors via state or county to go on their property and actually conduct this debris removal under the programs that are set forth. So just for clarity, this is a voluntary program, which is the PPDR debris removal program, okay? Okay, so when the property owner signs a right of entry form for the state or the county, this will authorize the contractor that the winning bid contractor to start this. They will start with a site assessment. This is done by the assessment and monitoring contractor. That's to oversee the actual physical debris removal contractor. So the site assessment team basically prepares an assessment report, a site map, excuse me. They'll draw out, they'll take photo documentation. They check for initial hazards, as well as on the right of entry form, the property owner has a section to put, the leaching field, the sewer tank, the wellheads, anything that's, underground fuel tanks, things that only they would know that's on their property, right? So there's locations for that to go in the right of entry, and for the site assessment team to actually verify, validate that it's there, mark it off if need be, basically draw the map for the debris contractors when they come, okay? Additionally, what this happens is we have an ARC and Bio, archaeological and biological monitoring or initial assessment will come out. They'll basically notate the property location from waterways, if there's bird nests anywhere, anything that's tribal resources, if it could be, if there's known resources in the immediate area, which would then do additional assessments for that. That all happens before anybody any heavy machinery or anything work is conducted on the property. So we make sure we have all of our angles covered, and we're in accordance with all regulations here. Perfect. All right. We'll move on to the next step. So again, this happens for each and every property. So if any of you obviously remember Campfire, it was about 14,000 structures, 12,000 homes. Each one of these steps happen on each individual property. So you can imagine it's a task that requires a lot of detail and there's a lot of steps that go with each property to ensure that this is done correctly, within our regulations, and make sure that the property is returned safe to the property owner, as well as the county, and the hazard are abated. Okay. All right. So next, adding on to the initial phase one, which is the bulk asbestos removal, the asbestos assessment will actually come out, which is a lot more detailed assessment. As Ivan said, the certified asbestos consultant will actually physically go through the debris pile, marking suspect asbestos. They'll take samples of it. They will send it to the lab to confirm or deny that it is asbestos. If it is, the asbestos will be removed right then and there. We've had actually, I think it was 2 years ago, we had a building in Trinity. It was an old schoolhouse. The entire schoolhouse was made of asbestos. So it was from quite some years ago, obviously, but I remember it was the most that DTSC had ever seen. And I remember that was something to note. So the asbestos is in a lot more materials than we think it is. Obviously not new built materials, but old materials, as the majority of where these fires are occurring are communities that have been built a while ago. Asbestos can be found in chimneys, shingles, insulation boards. I'm sure there's a whole list of things that I'm missing out on, but it's in a lot of things. So that's what his team and the CACs can identify and remove prior to any debris removal contractors going in there. We don't want to send anybody in with known asbestos in any location. So that all happens next after a site assessment.
Hey, Baylor, I just want to chime in here. So we've received a lot of questions as of late, I think probably from the interest in the Maui fires, but on our processes on why we conduct a site assessment after the household hazardous waste removal from DTSC, as well as the asbestos abatement process. And that's just we are overly conservative in making sure that we remove that public health threat and we start to remove the environmental concerns that we have within those properties. And while DTSC is able to really get the larger items from that, we have to remember that a lot of time in these incidents and in these disasters that there's small leaching, there's continued exposure and pathways of these toxins to come through. So doing that secondary site assessment, that secondary asbestos removal, and as we move through the process of soils, that's to make sure that we truly do remove the public health threat, as well as abate any of the environmental concerns that we have to complement the work that DTSC does.
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate it. Yes, absolutely. And then that what Heather just said leads up right into our actual oh my gosh, this would skip our actual debris removal. So this is obviously the most action-packed part of a debris removal scope on each property. So this is exactly what it sounds like. So this is where the actual physical debris removal occurs using heavy machinery and equipment. The agenda for the day, if you will, on each individual property for debris removal is that the assessment and monitoring consultant, as well as the contractor, will meet up in the morning, in addition with the property owner, if they would so like to be there. Usually the property, not usually, every time the property owner is notified prior to debris removal actually occurring on property. We do, as well as the county does, makes multiple attempts just in case if we can't get in touch with them. But we would like the property owners to be there because it basically lowers the risks of if there's a known hazard that maybe was not noted on an ROE that they put in there because they forgot, especially during this hard time when they just lost everything. Things can be, there's a lot going on emotionally and mentally. Our site assessment consultants maybe have missed something due to the nature of the geographic layout of the property. So we do like to have property owners there if possible, just to make sure that the things could go smooth as possible. So with this, when contractors and consultants roll up to the property, we'll do something called a 360 site walk. It sounds what it is. They will walk the entire property, going over the right of entry form, as well as the site assessment, as well as the asbestos assessment, ensuring that known asbestos has been removed where it says it was, so it's not physically there. As was stated before by TSC, it's noted pink paint. So obviously we don't want residual pink paint on the property prior to debris removal occurring, as that could bust it up and get in the air, and then people could breathe it. So the debris is then, after that, it starts to be removed. All our debris is segregated into 4 waste streams. So you typically have your metal, your recyclable metal, your ash and debris, everything else besides metal. You'll have concrete, which would be the foundations. Actually, yeah, pretty much just foundations. So that would be another waste stream because that can also be recycled up. And then you have soil, which will be the last thing we'll go over, and that's from scrapes from leached metals and things like that into the dirt with what happens with an uncontrolled house fire in a wildfire situation. So go ahead.
Hey, Bailey, I just wanted to chime in. We have some questions based on some of your previous slides that were in the chat, and I want to quickly address them just because they're pretty relevant right now. So the first question is, if we face the need for post-fire cleanup, who should we be contacting? Obviously, that's OES. If you want to talk about some of the regional presentation that you have later in the presentation. And then the training for CSTI, that is something we've been working through in our steady state operations. Obviously, we haven't, luckily, CAL FIRE has been doing an excellent job in protecting our residents. And we haven't needed to really deploy the debris removal program from a state level. And so we've been working with CSTI. There is an intent to have a debris specialty type of training program or certification. And that's going to be developed by OES as well, in coordination with CalRecycle and DTSC, I'm assuming. And then the ROE is a state standardized form. It does not, OES will provide that for jurisdictions who have been impacted so they can actually start to move into that phase 2 operation. So quickly, just wanted to chime in there while those were still kind of hot and didn't want to forget them.
No, I appreciate it, Heather. Thank you. And I apologize. The screen shows the Q&A is off the screen, so I don't see it. So I apologize.
I got you.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, if any questions come up that are relevant as we roll through, please just interrupt me and I would happily address as well. So, oops. Oh gosh. Oh no, we're right. Okay, so all right. So after debris removal is conducted, typically, so this will happen the same day or the next day right after, because we want to get these soil samples in. As the turnaround time could be, the labs get inundated with a lot of samples at once sometimes, and it could be a delayed turnaround. So this happens almost immediately after debris removal occurs. The assessment and monitoring contractor will go in and they will actually conduct soil samples. The samples are based on the structure footprint. They have a sample map that they'll establish basically on the depth of the footings from the structure, location, proximity to the rocks, the water, etc. Soil samples will occur. Basically, they're looking for leached heavy metals, toxins. I'm sure Ivan has there's quite a list of things that seep into soil that we want to ensure are removed. These samples are based on background soil samples that are taken post fire, but not in the burn footprint, if you will. So basically, if you have a small town that a community that burns, background soil samples are taken from unique geographic locations based on soil experts, if you will. And then those are the background soil samples that are used to relay for what our standard would be to make sure that the soils on the burn footprint are actually clean again. So we're not making a burn structure footprint into potting soil again. It makes it back to level. So these samples are sent off to labs. Typically, we take 3 to 6 inches off of each burn footprint. When we do soil scrapes, it is not the entire property. We get that question a lot. We're not scraping the whole acre. We are just scraping where the actual structure footprint was. And just for reference, everybody, a structure is 120 square feet. A qualifying structure is 120 square feet, so 10 by 12. Or obviously a home, it can be a garage, an outbuilding, things like that. That's a qualifying structure, is a 10 by 12 building. So that is where debris removal will occur. That is where soil samples are taken. That is where scrapes from soil are removed. Once the soils come back, typically turnaround time is about 10 days or so. They will show either that the samples clear and meet background levels, or they still need something called a rescrape. So at that juncture, the contractors would go back in and they would scrape 3 to 6 additional inches. Again, they're not scraping the whole. They're not scraping the whole burn footprint. If they're just one hot section, we would call it, they would just scrape that particular section, not the entire footprint. Again, we don't want to take more than is necessary from the property owner. So once that comes back, again, typically those are clean. If a third rescrape is necessary, that's addressed on an individual basis as we go forward. There's other sampling methods that we also use, including borings and XRF testing, things like that. That's more of a case-by-case basis. Typically, the rescrapes are not uncommon, so that's a normal practice and procedure that we implement for debris removal. A county would do the same thing on their own debris removal program. So, all right, moving on. So once soil samples come back clear from the lab and making sure that the property is free of hazardous material, next comes hazardous tree removal. If the property owner has qualifying hazardous trees on their property, those would be tagged and marked for removal. Now, what is a qualifying tree? A qualifying tree, and if they're enrolled in the program, it's not typically a either or. It's the full enrollment in our program. You would remove the hazardous waste, you would remove your ash and debris in the structure that has been burned, and you would remove your hazardous trees. So a hazardous tree is a dead or dying tree that is marked by a certified arborist, and the arborist is usually provided by the assessment and monitoring contractor to be dead or marked dead or dying within 5 years, has obvious fire damage due to the wildfire that came through. It is 200% from any, 200% height from any public right of way or infrastructure. That's a big one. So qualifying vegetative material has to be 200 feet or 200% from a public right of way, public road, public infrastructure, if you will. It has to be 6.5 inches at diameter breast height, which is 4 feet. And yeah, I think that's about it. So there's actually quite a few trees that are like that. Typically, our program does not approve trees along private roadways, things like that. Trees that would threaten the rebuild of a structure on the existing structure pad if they wanted to rebuild their house. Mind you, our crews, if there's a hazardous or imminently hazardous tree that's going to affect the health or safety of the crew or anything like that while they're doing debris removal, they will cut the tree right then and there. So there's no issues. But this is a public health emergency, right? So we want to abate the public emergency, which could be a tree falling on a public roadway. So
Hey,
trees
Bailey,
are-
just to chime in on this as well, and maybe we can add a little bit more context to the soil analysis slide, but some of the things to remember here is that we only remove the trees that are on participating parcels. We do not remove trees from federal land. So a lot of times when people come and see a burn scar area, they'll note a lot of trees that are still next to a roadway. Those are typically trees of either a property owner that decided not to participate in the program, which is completely voluntary, or it's on federal property to where we do not step in and remove the trees. It's a federal decision to make. The other part is that there's very good kind of definitions around the diameter of the tree that's necessary and in the fall timeline that we would expect that tree to collapse. And that could be 3 to 5 years. So a lot of people have some confusion around that. There are a lot of property owners who are pretty sentimental about their trees, and we try to work with them the best we can. But, we do, like you said, try to abate the threat to that public infrastructure piece to avoid any type of, devastation later on after the recovery effort. And then I'm going to pass it over to Courtney really quick to just kind of complement some of the information provided on the soil analysis slide as our local engineering geologist.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Heather. I was just going to say that our cleanup goals are determined by using those background samples that Baylor talked about and comparing them to the health screening levels. And whichever is higher is the one that we use for our cleanup goals. And this process really helps us to determine if the contaminants come from materials in the homes or are naturally occurring. For example, blue paint could be made with the cobalt, and after a fire, the object painted with the cobalt could have contaminated the soil. And like a fisherman who might still have a lot of lead weights, if a fire burns it, the wildfire burns at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, not Celsius. This could now be in the soil. So it's extremely important to remove these heavy metals. And rescrapes are sampled utilizing the same process as the initial rescrape or as the initial scrape and reviewed against the same cleanup goals.
So Courtney, really quick, there's just 2 questions that we pose on the chat specific to soil sampling. One is who pays for the soil sampling? That's the state. If someone participates in the program, they suffer no cost of the operations that are conducted on their parcel. We do pursue insurance claims and make sure that the insurance is paid, but that's through OES and the jurisdiction to handle. CalRecycle or Cal EPA does not get involved in that, but there is no cost suffered to the parcel or the homeowner from the debris removal process, including soil sampling. That's a state cost. And then the other, Courtney, is specific to you. As soil is scraped from the footprint, is it disposed as hazardous waste? If so, who is responsible for the cost of disposal?
So we take the soil gets placed in one of our 10-wheelers and then hauled off, breeder wrapped and hauled off to one of our lined landfills approved for the project. As per the cost itself, if the initial rescrape, I would like to say that I don't actually know, but this is just me saying that if the initial scrape is part of the program, then that disposal cost, actually I shouldn't,
No,
I honestly don't know who.
I could take this one. Courtney, you are correct though. Yes. So in our, and maybe Heather can add to this as well. So in the initial contract that goes out from either the state contract through CalRecycle, or if the county does their own debris program, the initial scrape and a rescrape up to an X percentage, we'll say 25% rescrape, which is pretty standard, honestly, across the board in disasters that I've worked in, most contracts that I've seen with OES. So it's budgeted for rescrapes in the contractor, the bid, if you will. So if it goes over that, then it'll be at cost to the contractor, not the county or the state. Yes, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and quickly just to add on to that, there is a reason why we have 2 contractors to kind of do a quality control and counterbalance on any type of aggressive debris removal or aggressive soil scraping or tree removal. That assessment and monitoring contractor is there to create a counterbalance to any type of just overly kind of unnecessary removals that occur from the debris removal contractor or the hazard tree removal contractor. So there is a good process with checks and balances across the board as the state program kind of goes through each parcel accordingly.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather. Appreciate it.
And then we have one more soil question. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
The incremental soil sampling ever used to better represent the overall contamination at a property? So that's from Dennis. Courtney, do you have any thoughts on that? Is incremental soil sampling ever used to better represent the overall contamination at a property?
I'm not actually sure if I understand that question.
I wonder if you're referring to, I think, the background soil samples that we take throughout the burn scar to kind of assess how bad the damage initially is.
Dennis, if you could maybe expound incremental
Yeah,
sampling
sorry.
method. Oh, he's asking for incremental sampling methodology. And what I'm interpreting this as essentially is the incremental soil sampling that we do from the actual debris site, representative of the overall parcel as a whole. So I would say that just from my recent experience in knowledge gleaned from my engineers and our team is that soil representation is focused and centered around where either that structure was or kind of the outlying parts of where those different elements of debris were present. We don't look like, for example, if the home was only so many square feet versus an acreage of a lot, we don't scrape the whole entire lot. We concentrate our efforts on where those structures or where those vehicles or toxic presence could be made from the fire. Courtney, does that sound about right?
Yeah, I was also thinking this could be about legacy properties. So properties that maybe have done something in the past, like they'd had their own mining mining operation on their property or something, and then the contaminants were there pre-fire. So as we rescrape, we might end up taking soil borings on the property itself. If the property keeps coming back with high levels of contaminants. So we'll take actual soil borings around the property to see if it's possible that there was contamination prior to the actual fire event, and that contamination is not due to the fire. So so over time, as we do the initial scrape with the background samples, then the initial scrape with the samples showing that those came back high level, still high, then the rescrape showing those came back still high. And if we keep doing rescrapes and they keep coming back high, then eventually we've got to figure something else out and determine what the issue on the overall property is, or probably on the property itself. So I guess that's maybe how I took the question.
And then, yes, there was a question about HAZWOPER training. All of our debris monitors are required to take HAZWOPER training. And we do have a safety officer on site from the state and from both contractors as well to ensure that those are all certified and adhered to. All right, Baylor, sorry, go back.
No, you're good. No, thank you. And I was actually going to add to something you said earlier as well. You mentioned vehicles. That's another really good thing to bring up. So vehicles, obviously a burned car is a hazardous item. Fuel, oils, leather seats, everything that would leach down into the soils. Wherever vehicles are located, that will be basically treated as a structure footprint in a sense, not a qualifying structure, just the vehicle. The location around the vehicle, probably within a foot outside of it, will be removed, scraped. The vehicle will be scrapped. Prior to that, obviously, it's adjudicated using we work. Depends on the kind of the scope of the damage. We've worked with CHP before. Typically, we go through local sheriff, local law enforcement, local SO to adjudicate the vehicles. Adjudication process can be authorized to an approved adjudicator, just depending on the county size. Again, Los Angeles as opposed to a smaller county that can be delegated, if you will. The vehicle adjudication process uses a 462 form where the VIN number is identified or not identified, which is okay as well. It goes in conjunction with the right of entry form stating the vehicles that were on the property. That is then sent to the DMV. The DMV will obviously go through and the registered vehicles of the property. If a vehicle is not registered, things like that. That's the whole process that occurs prior to us actually physically crushing a vehicle. In addition, landfills require that as well, as they don't want to crush a potentially stolen car or something like that. So we make sure we do our due diligence on our end, as well as the county, to make sure that these vehicles are identified, adjudicated before removal. If a vehicle is on a driveway, we get this question a lot too. If the property owners are going to say, are you going to take my whole driveway? No, that's not the case. We would just basically cut out the section where the vehicle is located on the driveway. And then that's the only part that would be removed, not the whole driveway. We do get that question quite frequently. So thank you, Heather. That reminded me about vehicles. So thank you. Okay. Let's go ahead and keep moving forward here. Okay, so hazardous trees, I'll just kind of keep touching on after hazardous trees are removed, the contractor will the trees basically were segregated in two groups, but the contractor can do whatever is most viable for basically recovery for the environment. So these trees will either be, most of the time it's chipped up and is either sold or given away as biomass material, things like that for charcoal filters, everything that biomass can go towards. It can be used as erosion control. That's a huge one, especially in a lot of the areas that we work in. These houses are built on hillsides. It's a local vegetative material, chipped up and sent right back to the same location. That's the most optimal type of to keep things local, right? So we want, and it also is doing a proper thing of assisting with erosion control. And then, of course, if it is a large substantial tree that is dead or dying and is certified by an arborist to be removed, but is still merchantable, that will be sold as merchantable timber. That is with the contractor and the end use facility within their agreement. But with erosion control, so we'll go ahead and add to that. So once the trees are removed, if erosion control, if chipping in the local area is an optimal way to do erosion control, the trees will be chipped up and dispersed over a location not to be more than 3 inches from the ground. But again, it is a site-by-site based situation. No two homes are the same. Typically, the operations chief from a state program would be from CalRecycle. They're engineers, et cetera. So they are able to make sure and kind of identify the proper ways that things should be going in that location. With this, we also do something called hydromulch. Now, hydromulching is something that is sprayed over the burn scar or the burn footprint of each individual structure. It's basically a woody pulp paper material mixed together with a tackifier, if you will. It's a glue and water, basically all organic. It is a non-seeded material. That's a big question that we get a lot. We don't want to introduce any foreign organics into a particular location, mix of contamination of vegetative things like that. So it's just wood chip, paper mulch, and a organic glue and water base. This is sprayed onto and a dye so they can see where they're spraying. It's sprayed on the burn structure footprint, and then after about, I don't know, 1 day or so, it becomes hard, and then it kind of promotes growth from underneath inside the vegetative or inside the dirt for it to grow up and grass, et cetera, like that. So basically, you can see here in this photo right here, the green would be that area that was a home or a garage or something, and that's basically what it looks like at the end of a debris program. So that actually concludes the process of each individual structure that is destroyed in a wildfire. Are there any, before I kind of go on implementation models, I know we were save questions at the end, but I kind of like doing questions as we go. What happens to hazardous waste debris? Okay, so good question. So what happens to hazardous waste debris on properties that are not signed up or enrolled, right? So the PPDR program is voluntary program, right? So the county would basically, you can do your own debris cleanup. Any survivor can do their own debris cleanup. They have a contractor, they have a buddy, they have whatever they want to do it themselves. That's totally okay. It just needs to meet the criteria set forth by the county. 99% of the counties that I've worked with, that we've all worked with, they model the state's program to a T. That includes soil sampling. If a property owner decides to do it themselves, they can do this entire process by themselves. The end result that we're looking for, and Heather or Courtney, please add to this if I'm mixing something. The end result we're looking for is the debris has been removed in a proper means and methods, brought to the proper locations, and the soil samples are come back all clear. There has to be documentation, not necessarily to the levels that a state program may do that, because they're not seeking reimbursement, right? So they're just doing this for their own recovery efforts. They can do that themselves. If they do not, the county can enforce an abatement process with them. That happens sometimes, every disaster. And this could just be property owners lose everything and they hands up and they walk away. We're not able to get in touch with them. They can't enroll. There's just zero communication at that juncture. During the debris removal program, it's best and cheapest where you have your contractors already in theater. That's why the county makes valiant efforts to get in touch with the property owner. If they can't after a certain time, they will issue an abatement warrant as a public nuisance and a hazardous health threat. They'll have their time to respond, which is, once the warrant is posted, I think it's 24 to 48 hours. And then at that juncture, we would enroll that property right into our runway of debris removal, and it would be cleaned by our contractors, and then a lien would be placed as an abatement warrant is enforced. So that's typically how that goes. Again, every county is specific. These are your counties, your people. Everything's a little different, but that's typically what we see if they decide not to enroll or do it themselves. Okay, that's all the questions here. So we will. All right, so I've kind of touched on this a little bit, but this is just kind of the procedure here of how our assistance levels work. Public assistance basically is the standard process to reimburse local governments for emergency work. This is for, obviously public infrastructure, anything that's occurring under Cat B, which is emergency mitigation measures, during the disaster, basically, right? This is either funded by CDAA, which is the California Disaster Assistance Act, which in a sense is state money. And then, or you have FEMA, which under the Stafford Act of the Disaster Relief Act of 1988 for that. So basically during a disaster, obviously the local government will perform the work during, and then document. I'm sure everyone has told everyone that basically eligible work will be subject to reimbursement at the later date, and obviously not during the disaster as it's happening. We're going to pause on that. So this particular section, if a county is doing their own county debris cleanup following our technical assistance and documents that OES can provide, our debris team can provide, CalRecycle can provide, we'll make sure that you are modeled for FEMA reimbursement. Okay, so that's all we do is for reimbursement to make sure we're in line with FEMA. All I's are dotted, no T's or all T's are crossed. So we have the resources, we have everything that every county needs to be in line with a state managed debris program. Okay, but you can do it yourselves. It's all there. Okay. Private property debris removal requires special authorization. So for a state-led program, the county would basically request state assistance for PPDR. That would be basically a state-led debris mission. You have a disaster in your county, you request PPDR through the state. If the state deems, and again, there's a various factor of criteria. Staff availability, financial availability. These are all for the counties. Can the county manage this disaster themselves with technical assistance or not? If not, the state would send in a team equivalent. It'd be me, Courtney, and Heather, for instance, be members of, not literally, but of an incident management team that would come out. The state would procure, Calvert Cycle would procure your assessment and monitoring consultant, your debris contractor, and then have a team in your county to actually conduct the debris removal program start to finish. Obviously, heavy involvement from the county, but the county does not have to actually run the debris program, if you will. So, yeah. Callaway has public assistance staff. They provide, support with liaison with FEMA. Obviously, if your county goes through a disaster, during disaster or immediately after disaster, you'll have your public assistance reps, your PDMGs, your FEMA reps that will come in. They'll work with you to do things like damage inventories or whatnot to get the proper documentation into grants portal, and have that process going. I apologize, I'm not a public assistance expert, but we have a whole plethora of staff that are, and that will all come to play during a disaster if an incident occurs in your county. So I know a lot of counties on here have had multiple disasters, multiple years, and I know actually a lot of you on here, I've worked with you closely. So, and then other counties have not. So just know that the assistance is here, the help is here. We are all here to help you. So just know that. Moving to, debris technical assistance, I kind of already touched on it a little bit. With that, we can also add in our other state agencies, obviously Calvert Cycle, Cal EPA, DTSC, the water boards, air boards. We're all here. Every agency like that comes to play with each individual debris site, right? So we have air monitoring. We want to make sure that nothing is getting into our waterways. We have it all. So with each debris disaster assistance cleanup, all these teams come together to help you move through this. You usually have one POC, kind of a technical liaison for and at the end of this, we'll have some contact information. You guys are obviously welcome to contact any of us. But the state has regionalization into 3 locations. We have the coastal region, inland region, and southern region. I am the inland region director for debris. And then you have Kelsey McInnes and then John Melendez. So I'm not sure which all the counties that are on here, but it'll be one of us 3. So, all right, technical assistance design for the best practices. So yeah, again, your POCs for each of your regionalization or each of your regions, we have templates, we have guidelines, urgency ordinances, even placards for your trucks. We have everything to set you up with for a successful debris mission. Which again, ultimately, as Jason said earlier, damages or disasters start and end locally. So if it is something that is deemed that can be managed by the county, if you guys can handle it, just know that we are there to help, and we will sit down with you and provide everything you need and be with you literally step by step of the way. Okay. So locally led and state led, the end goal will be the same, successful. Okay. And sorry, I apologize. I'm kind of jumping around. So direct state assistance is what I said already. The incident management team, Cal OES, Calvert Cycle would come in and actually do the mission. Okay, I'm just going to let everybody read this a little bit, but basically these are, itemized breakdowns between county and state-led responsibilities. Ultimately, as you can see, the county is, again, the ultimate. This is your disaster, your people, your area of apologies of concern. The state is always there to support. If direct state assistance or DSA is requested and approved by OES, then again, the county still is the front line to its residents, its people, its communication particularly, and the state does the heavy behind the scenes work, if you will. So I don't think I need to go over each one of these individually. I think you guys can see them. It all starts with the county, and then the state is there to support. Even in a state-led program, the day-to-day decision-making, the incident management team, the state-led incident management team will make the decisions based on very close communication and coordination with its county members. This, drastically varies on geographic locations. Where I may think is a good area to have crews go or start or whatnot is completely not a good idea, right? It could be, with the high elevations, it could be these known locations for environmental concerns, things like that, that we would want to start over there or kind of prioritize focus in particular areas. So our decisions, our incident management teams are work very closely with counties. So this is the black and white of it, but just know it's mutual collaboration. Okay. Insurance recovery. I know that we're going to get questions on this. I'm going to touch on this later. I think there might be another slide for it, but I know there's always insurance questions. Funding, DSA, direct state assistance. The state pays for basically a 75-25 is the typical FEMA cost share. If it is CDAA funded, the county can request 100% cost share reimbursement. The state will pay for everything, but typically it will be a 75-25 cost share as well. Again, this all varies on the nature of the incident, everything depends, right? So, but the standard black and white 75-25 cost share reimbursement, you can request additional if needed and if authorized or approved by the FCO or the SCO. Actually, and what Heather mentioned earlier regarding cost to property owners. So the whole point of a PPDR program is to abate the hazard and not at a zero cost to the survivor, the property owner, right? So the state or FEMA will pay for the entirety of the debris removal for the house or for the structure. But if the property owner does have insurance, we would recoup only the debris allocated portions of that insurance. I honestly, I think the national average is like 15,000, 12 to 15,000, I think is what I recall. So that would be the debris allocated portion. Typically a standard debris removal on a standard parcel of a 1,600 square foot house is approximately $50,000 for a full environmental cleanup. That's just the basic across the board, just to give reference for everybody that the debris allocated portions when property owners are trying to do their own can be expressed to them financially, maybe that unless they can do it themselves better than and cheaper than how we would do it. So, okay.
Hey, Baylor, I think we can skip the next couple slides and jump to the pre-planning, which I think is of interest to folks.
Yes, thank you.
18.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of went through all the slides already just in one, so I appreciate it, Heather. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, cool. All right, so yeah, pre-planning. So before the disaster happens. So if your county does not have a disaster debris management plan, OES and CalRecycle are happy and here to assist in making one. We have all the resources for you. And basically, this is not a, sit around the table and make this up as we go. You reference other disaster, our county's disaster debris management plans. There's a lot of lessons learned from disasters in the past to make a better, smarter future. So if you do already have one, we are happy to take a look at it, provide feedback, critique, comment. Again, your county better than we do, but we can lessons learned and BMPs, if you will, we can maybe add to what you have for a better one. Trainings for disaster classes, ICS 300, which is just your NIMS layout for incident management, coordination, et cetera, like that. The G205 is the local emergency. I'm going to mess this up. I apologize. It's the how to manage emergencies at a local level. That's a really good training. I've taken that. It just basically shows everything that I'm saying, but how to start it from inside behind your closed doors and then coming out for state and direct federal assistance. So it's a really good training. It's really good to start off at a local level for disaster management. Yes. So, and then maybe CalRecycle wants to add more to this too, but there are various things prior to a disaster. The landfills, ash and debris, we don't want to take ash and debris from a site, put it in a burrito wrap truck, which is basically a plastic lined 10-wheeler covered so it's not spraying out while we're driving, and then go to a non-lined landfill. So just to put the dirt back in the ground and then it leaches right back into where it was. So there's particular specifications of landfills that need to be approved. I don't know if there's Heather, you want to, or not Heather, Courtney, if you want to go over more of that, or if I'm doing okay.
I can hop in, Baylor. Sometimes the idea what's going to happen is after there's all this debris that's going to the landfill is that it's likely that they might need a waiver to increase the amount of debris that they'll accept for the year. So Cal Recycle essentially gives rights to those waivers. So if there's a lot of debris that's anticipated to come into a landfill, the waivers are going to need to be put in place before debris removal occurs, so they can accept more debris than what they're permitted essentially to accept.
Thank you, Courtney. Yes, absolutely. So these are all things that we can address and account for prior to, God forbid, a disaster actually happens. Again, it depends on the geographic layout of your county. If you have a huge fire coming in, that it could potentially burn 2,000 homes in a small amount of time, as we know how wildfires act and their nature of them, we should probably, as a county, would plan for a 2,000 home structure loss immediately, as opposed to a more rural area. A fire comes down a ravine, we can manage and kind of triage, if you will, what would happen in your county, and your county is better than anybody. So that's something that can be discussed roundtable, and we can kind of work a plan together to help you with that. Pre-position debris removal contracts. These are huge. I think these are a great idea. Not a lot of counties have them. Pre-position contracts are typically for in a response kind of phase of a disaster. Something occurs, you have your public works and your emergency contractors go out there and mitigate that issue. Debris removal contractors are something that's not as forward thought of, because no one ever wants to think about the worst, right? So as we all have seen since 2018, things are just every year there's something new. Pre-position debris contracts, following the FEMA guidelines for proper procurement and your local procurement guidelines, you could get those and have them on standby. So for a promoted county-led debris program, you can execute it almost immediately as soon as the recovery efforts start. You don't have to wait for the state, so by any means. So it's a lot easier for technical assistance in a locally led debris program than the DSA, and we have our process that we have to go through on our side. So we're really promoting and pushing pre-position debris contracts. So we're happy to help with that. If you have questions, things like that, to kind of get procurement orders and anything you need to get that ball rolling, our whole team is really excited about that. So I will pause. Are there any no questions? Beautiful. All right. And again, on the right side, this is all during blue skies with no disaster. It seems like there's always a disaster, but we always make time for our counties, and nothing is too important for you guys, or for us to stop and help you guys with anything you need. So we're all here. Our team is spread all over. We go all over. We do everything. So there's not a lot we haven't seen or done, or I can send you to somebody who's seen or done to help you with anything. So, okay. All right, we're gonna go to the next one here. Okay, so the master service agreement for debris assessment and monitoring. So we get a lot of questions on this one as well. So hopefully I kind of encompass everything. And Heather, if you have anything to add, please feel free to step in at any point. Okay, the master service agreement with the state is a DGS procured contract through, I believe there's 4 or 5 maybe pre-approved assessment and monitoring consultants, if you will. Okay, so if basically we've got the legwork out of the way for identifying a FEMA approved or a reimbursable approved assessment and monitoring contractor or consultant. If you have a disaster, this is, I guess, the guideline here. So if you have a disaster, you would then go to DGS's website. You would basically click the MSA section. You would pick the environmental contractor that is best subject for your area. So there's a lot of little fluid criteria in here. So yeah, there's a lot of, it just depends on the disaster, kind of the nuance of where it's at, what the issue is, the scope of the damage. If you've got 10,000 houses, if you've got 500 houses, If you just have trees, there's a lot of, each one kind of has its own forte, if you will.
Hey, Bailey, I'll chime in on this. I think the
Thank you.
biggest way to kind of understand the MSA opportunity that jurisdictions have is if you are familiar with it, you have the capacity and the resources to handle your own debris mission. There are services and assistance provided by OES and CowerCycle who can support you in being successful in managing your own debris mission. If you do find that it's gone beyond your capacities, that's when the state can step in and really support that effort with your leadership from the jurisdictional level. So that's the biggest takeaway from the MSA piece. It's there for you to utilize if you need it to procure your assessment and monitoring team. You'll see on a couple slides from now from the CowerCycle side, we have examples of our proposals and different contracts that have gone out to our debris contractors. So those are all things that we can leverage to help support jurisdictions running their own state debris program or own debris program, or if they choose to use the state debris program, they can do that as well.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate that.
No problem.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. And again, as additional questions about MSA, please, you can contact us directly and we're happy to kind of walk through it with you. So
just a note to everybody, let's hold off on questions until the end of the presentation so that we get through all the presentations and then we can open it up to the panel and do all the questions at the end.
perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you, Christine. All right, technical assistance. Again, I'm just going to kind of peruse through this real quick. We've kind of already gone over it. Technical assistance, OES debris team, members of CowerCycle, engineers from CowerCycle, the specialists from DTSC, Caltrans, Water Board, EPA, any state agency. We're there for you as a team. Typically OES and CowerCycle, we are one unit in these. Coming together as an incident management team or a liaison for technical assistance to counties. Yes, so we're here for you. If you do if a county or lead mission, any questions you have, anything you need, we are here. Call us, text us, anything. So that's the nutshell of that.
And just to echo the same sentiments on the next two slides for CowerCycle, we have a lot of technical expertise when it comes to contract management, operations, as well as some of the engineering expertise that's needed to really be efficient in these debris missions. They can, as you saw earlier, 40% of an overall cost of a disaster is pretty hefty of a price tag. And so being as effective and efficient as possible is really the goal to make sure that we can get our survivors back onto their properties so that they can move forward in their lives. Some of the other things we have access to that we can provide jurisdictions if they decide to lead their own mission, we can hybrid the staffing model, or we can provide you materials to help educate survivors on the different, as well as historical data. We've been providing a lot of historical data to Maui so they can better establish their parameters for their contracts. So there's a lot of kind of technical expertise that we have at CowerCycle that can support a jurisdiction through a mission tasking of technical assistance to be successful in their own debris mission. And that's kind of the next two slides in a nutshell, so we can jump.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather. Appreciate it. I think we can go ahead and skip this one as well. Pre-incident technical assistance, again, the buildup of your disaster debris management plan to identify a scope of damage that could potentially come out in your county and how we can mitigate prior to it actually occurring and what happens when it does happen. Okay, again, I apologize. I know it seems a little redundant in these slides here, but just the importance. So when a disaster is occurring, disaster has happened, we're here providing technical assistance, again, sharing best practices. I think the biggest takeaway from the slide will be on the right side of the slide for everyone's awareness. Templates and examples. We have a plethora of all of these. I guarantee 99% of you, this is what you're looking for. And we have a model, a method for each one of these for any kind of disaster. I think even including space debris, and no lie. So local procurement, urgency ordinances, things like that. These are all things that have to happen right as the disaster recovery is commencing. This authorizes and opens up waves and gates that will need to proceed forward with debris removal, permits, environmental, things like that. So again, I have all these templates and I can send them to any one of you. So no problems whatsoever if you guys would like to look at any of these, okay? And then Heather, if you want to touch on your homepage or just.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. So our team has done a great job at CowerCycle and redoing our homepage to be a little bit more accessible and intuitive on navigating it. So we have a lot of information out there for homeowners that jurisdictions can pull from to either use as a template or an example. We have the complete phase 1, phase 2 language that was covered in this briefing here. And then from, again, our contractor side, we have our previously awarded contracts that can serve as a really strong base for jurisdictions to develop their own debris removal contracts to complement the MSA that's already available by DGS. So cowercycle.ca.gov/disaster. That's where you're going to be finding a lot of the historical information that we have here at CowerCycle, and we're always here to help as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather. Yes, perfect. And here's some contacts. Again, we can provide this PowerPoint to any one of you. I'm not sure if Cheryl probably or Christine will send it out to everyone on this list. But here's your main POCs at CowerCycle, and then main POCs here at OES. Again, Cole Glenwright is our debris ops unit chief for the state of California. He is a whiz at everything and a mentor to me and my whole team as well. Kelsey McInnes would be your coastal region, and I can provide a map of the regional breakdown. So you guys kind of know who your particular POC is going to be. Your regional emergency services coordinator through OES should be able to provide that information for you as well. Again, I'm inland, and then John Melendez will be southern. So, and then here's our websites as well. I think that concludes the brief. I apologize. It was maybe a little redundant, but we just sort of want to make sure that everyone is aware that we are here to help, and we have the resources for you. So, Christine, you can take it from here. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
You're a little glitchy.
I just froze. Sorry.
There we go.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. And Baylor, I sure hope we don't have any space to break next. But anyway, thank you all so much for that presentation. I'm going to go ahead and move over to Sada Urabati and the CDPH group, and they'll do their presentation. And then at the end, we'll have some time for an open discussion with the entire panel. So, Sada, do you want to go ahead and take over the screen share?
I'm actually going to just quickly introduce CDPH team and hand it over to our Center for Preparedness and Response. They'll be doing the presentation. So take it away, Michelle and Alex.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michelle Patterson. I'm from the California Department of Public Health Center for Preparedness and Response. And those of you who've been in this world a while may know us as formerly EPO, or the Emergency Preparedness Office. We've recently gone through a bit of a reorganization. So see, I think we've got the screen share all good to go. Can everybody see? I think everybody can see.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. All right, thanks. So I'm joined today by Alex Schubeck in our response section. So we're going to take a little bit of a step away probably from that deep debris management. I learned a ton, so thanks Baylor for that. Takes me back to my days in Calaveras County doing Butte fire recovery. So thanks for those memories. Appreciate that. So Alex, do you want to say hi or give a little
Sure,
intro?
I'll say hi real quick. My name is Alex Schubeck. It's not Trebek. You can ask questions either way. I am currently the Intel section chief for the 24/7 intelligence hub that we're currently building. I'm part of the program and response branch, and that's about it for me. Thank you, Michelle.
All right, so we're just going to kind of flip back and forth here, taking you through the whole emergency management cycle. And Sauda, please hop in. Neither Alex or I have a deep environmental health experience. You know, we're adjacent, tangential to it, but Sauda, please hop in and add any details you'd like. So we're just going to cover, I know there's a lot of new folks and changing of the guard and turnover in places that have happened in counties. I came from a county before I was at the state, so definitely familiar with that. So we're going to kind of touch on some processes and some of our functions at CDPH. So we'll just go through that, and again, we'll take questions at the end. So just to sort of set the stage as far as local emergency planning is concerned, and hopefully this is very much review and repetitive for everybody, but just wanted to sort of the focus on the fact that environmental health is part of the emergency support function 8, public health and medical. All of the emergency support functions are organized into little buckets, and there is a lot of cross section with other emergency support functions. So like Baylor mentioned, you know, ESF 10 with hazmat and others. But as part of ESF 8, we have public health, we have medical, and we have environmental health. And those we'll talk a little bit more about the medical health operational area coordinator program. So hopefully that is not a new phrase for you, but environmental health and all of the things that environmental health oversees in its mission are also responsibilities of the MOOC program. So if, you know, a lot of counties, I can't think of one that hasn't experienced a disaster in the last few years. But if, you know, this is sort of reminder wanting to make sure that if you guys aren't currently engaged in all of the different emergency planning activities that are occurring in your counties, we definitely encourage you to do that. Environmental health is a critical component of emergency preparedness and planning and response and recovery. And, you know, especially with, you know, COVID and staffing shortages and, you know, turnover and sort of all of these things happening at the same time, steady state stuff needing to occur in conjunction with response and recovery. There's a lot going on. So just some, you know, kind of key reminders about, you know, identifying and training staff in response and recovery efforts. And, you know, there's a lot. There's a lot of different components to this. There's a lot of different responsibilities, a lot of different processes. But, you know, obviously, you know, and Baylor mentioned this, we're here to support and sort of help you kind of traverse that planning with your local partners. Some of the other things, and especially coming from county service into the state, some of the things we, you know, really struggled with was emergency contracting. Different counties have different perspectives and policies and ordinances and other things. And when you need something to happen, you know, kind of getting through all of those layers of bureaucracy can be a challenge and can inhibit your ability to respond and subsequently recover. So, you know, working in steady state really on those sort of administrative preparedness efforts and identifying ways to, you know, speed up emergency contracting. And subsequent to that, you know, obviously, you know, there are things we can do in steady state to identify resources to establish pre-disaster agreements. So whether that's pre-disaster MOUs with neighboring counties to help with staffing, as a local jurisdiction, I was responsible for mass care and sheltering. So putting agreements in place for things like porta potties and ADA sinks and ice machines and things like that, things that we knew we were going to need. And so it just sort of helps to be able to get through things a little bit faster when you've got those resources lined up ahead of time. And again, every county's, you know, processes are different for these types of activities, but having those conversations in advance and ensuring that there's, you know, a way, particularly, and I'm not an expert at the funding mechanisms for all of these, but, you know, that always came up as an issue. Definitely understanding local threats and hazards, and they seem to be changing on the regular basis or expanding. I don't recall needing hurricanes to be part of our threat assessment, but here we are. And definitely there's, an increased emphasis on chemical and radiological emergencies. And so ensuring that your staff are knowledgeable about those things and that you've taken a look at the capabilities that you have to respond to those types of events. If you're not currently familiar with your county's emergency operations plan, definitely would recommend taking a look at that and seeing how your Office of Emergency Services has you linked into that plan, and ensuring that those are all accurate statements. And after several years of COVID, continuity of operations should be something that we are just really adept at, but making sure that you have a plan in place to execute a continuity of operations if it is needed. Couple other things that we wanted to really kind of hit on, and Alex is going to kind of dig real deep into these. Some people that you should know in your jurisdictions if you don't already. Being part of the public health and medical emergency support function ties you into your medical health operational area coordinator. That can be the health officer or the emergency medical service administrator by statute or a designee. And Alex will talk more about that, but making sure that if you don't know who that person is, that they are sort of a main point of entry for you into a number of different processes. Every local county jurisdiction has a public health emergency preparedness program funded through by CDC and ASPR through the state. So our office actually, and then to the counties. And they are all always working on emergency planning. Their work plans include environmental health in many different ways. So get to know those folks. That's the world I came from. So I can tell you they're good people. And if you're not regularly engaged with your local Office of Emergency Services, definitely reach out and build a relationship with them. You should be included during activations. You should have a seat at the table. So making sure that, you're planning with them regularly, you're exercising with them regularly, and that, those conversations are happening. Baylor mentioned, some training resources. Likewise, I put some of those same training resources here, and there's more at the end of the presentation. So you're welcome to have these slides. But spending time and making sure that your staff are trained. We talk about ICS and how important that is. And there's, there's a lot to be said about making sure that you're giving staff time to be trained to do this. It helps in both response and recovery. So I'll turn it over to Alex.
Thank you, Michelle. So as you probably recall from your SEMS training, we have different levels of government and overall a little bit of a requesting hierarchy of how we go about it. So our regional state medical health response system is really focused around two key positions, and that's the medical health operations area coordinator, the MOHOC that Michelle already talked about a little bit. And then at the regional level, we have what we call the RD MHC, which now I had to actually really think about that, is the Regional Disaster Medical Health Coordinator. Now, the MOHOC technically will usually be the starting point for you, and that could be that you're either assigned to the area EOC, so that usually the county level is the operational area, or that you're assigned to the Department Operations Center, the DOC. And that's usually the requesting levels that we see from the local government and the operational level, area level. Now, the MOHOC will be your liaison really to open up any mutual aid. That's their job. So there, as we saw on the previous slide, there are 17 key functions, and a lot of them are actually environmental health related functions. So yes, there we have it. So hazardous exposures, hazardous waste, food safety. So a lot of things that definitely overlap multiple areas, but they're your key partner really in getting you the mutual aid that you might need. We can go back to the other slide. Thank you, Michelle. So when we look at it then, when you're doing your requesting, you would go to this MOHOC. Now, if you don't know who your Mohawk is, they're publicly listed. They're on the CalEMSA site, and I think we can actually provide a link later on as well. But usually or traditionally, what we find is the majority of them are usually your local EMS directors, so the LEMSAs. But there are also public health directors or health officers that fill this position. And then at the regional level, we have for the coordinator position, that's an appointed position that is usually chosen within the region. And so that could be, again, the health officer, sometimes it's the medical director as well for an EMS program, or an EMS director, and they're chosen and appointed for that regional level. Their job is then also to, so we have 6 regions for CDPH and CalEMSA, and they would then take the information they got from the Mohawk, the request that you had sent, and the Mohawk first tried to fill within their operational area. They would then try to do the same thing within the region and send you the closest resources that they can find. If they're unsuccessful in doing so, then they will go and report to our duty officer. If we haven't opened up our MHCC, is our Medical Health Coordination Center. So that's the equivalent of the Emergency Operations Center in some ways for CDPH. And the goal would then be to find the resources in a statewide level. And if we're unable to do that, then we can go up to the next level, and that would be to do a request to the federal government to get any resources. So you can see that it's probably going to take a while. And so that's really going next into our next slide. And that is, you have to be pretty realistic about this requesting process and what you're asking for. And so the first step is really for all of you to make sure, if you haven't talked to a Mohawk or are not really sure who he is or she is, to reach out to them and just to get to know them. And that makes it also a lot easier if you're calling at 3 a.m. And so they will usually then know who you are. Now, I'm pretty sure they know who you are, but regardless of that, get to know them and start working with them to familiarize yourself really with what's your requesting platform. And a lot of counties have different ways of doing that. Some different emergency management platforms to do resource requesting. The common part in this is usually that we use a form called the 213RR. That's a resource request form. And that's really the way most requests are done to begin with. Now, why you want to be familiar with that is really just because you want to make sure that you ask the key questions of what is necessary or what do you need. And you want to be very specific about these things, because whoever might fill your request ultimately, it might not be an environmental health person. It might be somebody in public health like us, but it also might be somebody assigned from EMS or from mental health, or if you're lucky, another environmental health person. So just keep that in mind. Just because it is clear to you does not necessarily mean that everybody immediately knows what you are asking for that. Now, other services, so the fire service, for example, has solved this very nicely by having resource typing. We're not there yet, but I think that would be something really nice ultimately in ESFA to have that. It gets just fairly complex because of all these subspecialties that everybody has. In regards to practicing, you can reach out to us. We're always happy to play, and we can certainly coordinate with the region and the op area level to make those practice drills happen. And the other part is really, try to do these when we have large exercises. Be part of that and start integrating requesting resources as part of these exercises. But I would say one of the best ways to really learn, besides doing training and doing those training resources, is really to just respond, to be part of an actual respond. And if it's not your jurisdiction, good for you. It's the perfect training opportunity to help out your neighbors and at the same time get really valuable experience that you can then take back home. Again, be realistic about what you're asking for. If you're asking for 1,000 environmental health specialists to come in, there are probably not that many available in the entire state. So so you kind of have to look at what is also available in your region, and this is a great opportunity to reach out to your fellow environmental health directors, talk to them, know what resources are available. And this is, by the way, something that over the years I've done quite a bit, is when you're doing your resource requesting, you can be specific and say, hey, the following departments have actually this resource. So that makes it a lot easier a lot of times for us to also then just go back and be like, hey, would you be able to do that? And then also keep in mind that in order to have people come out, that's not going to happen immediately. So you have to set fairly realistic time frames and expect that this will take time. Now, recovery process is obviously a pretty long process, but just anticipate that you will most likely have to liaise, or you will have to have people coming from all over the country. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Michelle.
Thanks, Alex. Let's see, click back in here. So Alex touched on recovery, and of course, most of our presentation time together today has been really focused on recovery, on the very tangible side of debris removal recovery. We are, much like the emergency support functions, there are recovery support functions as well. So health and social services is that bucket for us in public and environmental health. And we are really, aside from the very tangible topics of recovery, debris management, tree removal, things like that, we're really trying to build a framework for what does public health recovery look like, and what does it, how do we get the resources? How do we build those libraries of resources? Sauda and I have been working closely with Cal OES and ASPR on winter storm recovery efforts, and ensuring that resources are available for mold identification and remediation, and water testing and soil testing, and all these other sort of areas of recovery that perhaps in maybe not the so distant past, public health wasn't really. We had bits and parts and pieces, and now we're trying to really formalize that and bring that all together. Like Alex mentioned, recovery, the response, and Baylor mentioned this as well. The response happens, the thing happens, the response happens. The fire gets put out, the storm moves on. So the event ends, but this recovery goes on for days, weeks, months, and years. It was a couple years ago when I got a notification that said that FEMA had finally closed the disaster for the Northridge earthquake, and it was like 20 something years later. So, these things are going on for a long time. And unfortunately, we have compounding events, and that they're overlapping and happening simultaneously. And so that's pulling all of our resources and putting a strain on everything. So, we're trying to get really good at what this looks like, and provide as much help as we can in developing these frameworks. That was our very brief presentation for today. There's a lot of opportunities to learn more. I wanted to sort of point out specifically that the environmental health training and emergency response, Sauda's group at the Center for Environmental Health actually provides that training, sort of very California specific. Alex mentioned the list of the medical health operational area coordinators, so that's a resource on here as well. Gives you their phone number and their email address and who they are and where they're located. So hopefully that is a helpful resource for you, and you can always reach out to us for more. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Sauda.
Thank you, Michelle and Alex, for going over planning, preparedness, recovery, coordination, response. I just wanted to quickly add that if anyone is not that familiar, the Center for Environmental Health there is a brand new section for local program coordination, and the chief of that section, the environmental health support section, primarily here to serve locals, but we are coordinating across our department with other state agencies as well as national. We have reach back to pull in resources. I did want to add quickly to Michelle and Alex's presentation that CDPH has multiple other resources for public health to assist locals. Of course, you know that we have an entire environmental EPI team, something that usually local jurisdictions don't have, and they can come out and do modified CASPAs if you need. We have medical toxicologists and exposure scientists that can help as your communities are moving back, or even as the debris removal operations are happening and communities are concerned, and all kinds of questions are coming at health officials that you won't always anticipate or know how to answer. We are all collectively here to help. So please do reach out. We also, of course, have labs that can do environmental testing, human specimen testing. So there's a whole lot. And if you are ever in doubt, you don't have to remember any of this. Just know that we exist and you can reach out. As Alex said, the best way to do it is through your MOOC and your RDMHS, and we will find the right person for you to assist. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Sada, Michelle, and Alex. Really appreciate your presentation. I think right now what we'll do is we'll just go to a panel discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Marie Wooden, and she's going to run the Q&A.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to go back to a few of these questions because I want to make sure they were answered. So this is probably for Cal Recycle and Cal OES. Michelle, forgive me for your last name, Bilodeau. Who pays for the sampling? Is the homeowner responsible for paying this? And please touch on both the volunteer program and the private. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. Great question. So no, the homeowner does not pay for soil sampling with the state enrolled debris program. That is all wrapped into its entire parcel from site assessment to the parcel being returned certified cleaned. Soil sampling is included with that. Don't have to worry about it. You do private program, they want to do it themselves. Yes, they will have to pay for it themselves, depending on the county. Now, there are counties that do not require or mandate soil samplings in California. Most of them do. If your county opts to require soil sampling, that will be part of a final sign-off, if you will, packet from the property owner and their contractor, including certified passing soil samples for the county to certify it clean and issue building permits, et cetera, and whatnot. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Next question from Mahe Oyos. As soil is scraped from the footprint, is it disposed as hazardous waste? If so, who is responsible for the cost of disposal? Maybe DTSC, OES, Cal Recycle, if you can chime in on that question.
I could probably answer that as well. The soil that is scraped from underneath the parcel is classified as hazardous waste. It will be disposed of as such. That would be basically from the site to the landfill, burrito wrapped in a 10-wheel truck. So there's nothing being aired out as it's being transported. Once it's at the certified landfill, a lined landfill, it's just how it sounds. The debris will be dumped in its plastic wrap in a plastic landfill to be that will be the end use, so it won't leach into soil, et cetera, like that. That's part of the contract from the debris contractors to do that. So it's all wrapped into the parcel price when it goes out for bid. I hope that answers the question.
Courtney, do you have anything to add? All right. Anyway, all right.
No, I do not. Sorry.
Okay. Next question from Sarah Sanders. How can I find an example of a really good disaster debris management plan? Are there public documents? So I just want to mention one thing because in my county, we were heavily involved in environmental health, and that's your debris disaster debris management plan. So each county should have their own debris management plan. And I'm going to let Christine Sosko also talk about that because I call her the poster child of county disasters. Anyway, she's had so many she's had to deal with. Also, she's going to touch on this committee, CCDH. We're working on an environmental health guidance document for debris management. So Christine, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. We've been working, the Emergency Response Committee has been working for a couple years now on putting together a guidance document that will kind of start, take you from that first stage all the way through the debris management process. Great for somebody who it's their first time walking through that process. Or somebody who maybe has done it before, but just wants to check in and remember what the stages were. So that document should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. I will send that out to the entire membership. And then also that document will get loaded up onto the CCDH website. And then there will be subfolders under that document that will have templates of all the different types of documents that you're looking for. So one ask to all of you is if you look there and there's some sort of template that you're looking for, maybe that isn't there, let us know and we'll try to get some templates up. And then also, if you happen to have a really great template and want to share it with everybody, let us know and we'll get that on the website too. So we're really excited for this document to come out, and everybody look for it when it arrives.
One thing I will add what Christine said is this document was written, as she said, to expand upon all debris management disasters. And it says in the first paragraph that we're hoping that you take elements of this document and incorporate it in your disaster plan. This will really help you out. You can use it as an appendix, or you can just take elements of it if you have some of those components already in your plan. Okay, next question from Amy Irani. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time and the excellent guidance. One of the questions that we receive from homeowners after a wildfire is how to remove these trees that were not part of the hazardous tree removal process. Will the state have a future focus on creating assistance for removal of the trees damaged that are not included in the hazardous tree assessment?
So yes, I'm happy to answer that. So the hazard trees that are removed is obviously for the enrolled program parcels, right? Actually, I guess there's two parts of this question. A property owner can opt into a tree-only removal portion of the program if their structure is not burned, or if they have no qualifying structure. If they just have hazardous trees come through, they can opt into a tree-only right of entry form through CalRecycle in our program, and we would just remove the hazardous assessed trees from the arborist that comes through. So that's the enrolled parcels. For parcels not enrolled or anything like that, any hazardous trees that are affecting public infrastructure, public right-of-way, that's OES does not particularly have a conduit to do that. It would be mostly local public works. Heather, I may be missing something, but it's usually a county issue for kind of things like that, but I will be quiet, let Heather, you got something else for me.
Oh, no, not a problem at all, Baylor. I think what the question is asking actually is if the trees are not marked as a hazardous tree, or a hazard tree, excuse me. And if that's something that the state would be willing to help. We're pretty strict on not putting improvements onto a property or removing things that are not necessarily needed to be removed. So if the homeowner is deciding that they want more trees removed on their property after a disaster has occurred, but they're not a threat to public infrastructure, it goes outside the means of the public health emergency and the regulations that we're under and operating within our authority. So the homeowner essentially would be responsible for removing non-hazard trees following a disaster.
And I have a caveat to that, right? In addition to what Heather just said there as well. So if a homeowner has debris removal insurance, okay, they can opt to use the allocated portion of the debris removal insurance before collection from the county. Okay, so disaster happens, they can cut the trees themselves, hire a contractor to cut the trees themselves and be notated as such that it is a hazard tree removal that is not assessed by us, but a hazardous tree removal from their property that could be threatening other things, not public right of way, okay, or public infrastructure. Then that when insurance remittance comes to the county, they can provide documentation that the allocated debris removal, or it would also go for hazardous tree removal, was used as such. Then that portion of insurance proceeds would not be subject to constituted back to the county and to the state. So does that make sense? They can use their insurance portion to cut and mitigate hazards on their property and document as such via a receipt, things like that. And then those funds of the insurance proceeds would not be subject for remittance back to the state when that occurs. Okay. And granted, this is a case-by-case basis, but things like that, that does happen as long as it is used to mitigate a hazard on their property. I hope that answers the question. That's a really good question.
Okay, there was a question that was out there, but I think Heather answered it, but I'm going to go ahead and read it because some of you may have been wondering. Todd Burton asked, are the templates and examples available on a website? And Heather said, for CR, there are examples of contracts and materials available for reference to build your own. We do not have templates as many of the contracts vary due to nuanced info specs needed based on the disaster impact. Heather, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, just to kind of build on that conversation. All of our contracts from prior award are available online. The MSA you can look at, but essentially leverage those materials to build your own. Because disaster impacts vary dependent on location, topography, all of those different things. We don't build templates of our contracts because of the variances of those impacts and how we have to adjust to accommodate the needs of the jurisdiction during our recovery efforts. Baylor, did you want to add to that?
Thank you, Heather. Yes, and for our templates, there's a lot of templates. We do not have actually like a public location or file for people to come, grab them, but I'm happy to send them I can literally send them to this whole group. There's a lot of templates though, so I'd actually almost prefer not to inundate my emails, but if you have particular ones that you're looking for, to direct message me and I will happily send you those templates. I maybe could do a Google Drive cloud or something as well, but there's a lot of templates in a lot of different scenarios. And again, to Heather's point, utilizing all this information to kind of create your own. I have everything though. I have everything that anybody needs. So.
Okay. Next question is from Mario Kelson. What is the role of the CUPA and LEA in permitting, monitoring debris, staging, collaboration with Cal EPA, and regular inventory of facilities? Christine, would you like to start off answering that question?
Actually, I think I'll send that over to Heather. Heather, can you grab that?
Yeah, so when it comes to landfills in particular, that's another side of CalRecycle, led by Mark DeBee and the West Minterman Group, and they will work with the LEAs to ensure which landfills are capable of handling the different types of debris. And then our engineers actually work with the local representation on the permitting process and then the transferring to those different facilities and use facilities. When it comes to monitoring, we actually contract that out to our assessment and monitoring contract team. So it's not something that we keep in-house, but it's something that we do involve jurisdictions in. So it just depends on the level of involvement and the capacity of the CUPA and the LEA to be involved. But there is a point of involvement, especially when it comes to that landfill management piece. Jason, did you want to chime in? I saw you come on screen.
Yeah, and just on the CUPA side, and Ivan can speak to this, as far as the temporary staging areas for household hazardous waste, DTSC will work with the CUPA, local environmental health, to determine those best sites within the jurisdiction to have those temporary staging areas for HHW. Ivan, you want to speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, and during the after we get mission tasked by OES to assist the locals, we do coordinate with the locals and doing a site visit to look at the impacted areas. And then it's important for us to identify and secure staging areas because that's where our contractors will be headquartered out of for storage of equipment, materials, and then subsequent storage of the waste as it's being brought from the impacted sites to the staging area. So it is an important part that we need to have and establish before we begin phase 1 operations.
Christine, do you want to talk just a little bit about your debris task force and how the LEA is involved in that?
Oh, I think a lot of counties, what ends up happening is when you do have a disaster, you will have your recovery phase and then you'll form a debris task force. Sometimes this is led by your Transportation Public Works Department. It can be led by many different departments. Environmental Health generally has a very strong seat at that as part of that debris task force group. And many times Environmental Health will lead that group. Here in Sonoma, Sonoma County actually leads it. In the past, we actually had Transportation Public Works that led it. But I think that there is a very big role for the LEA in that, and then the management all the way through the process and recovery is all follows through that debris task force, which is part of your emergency management program.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, Mario Kelson asks, are there statutes which inform LHJ regulations on testing standards, thresholds, etc.? Abatement is 10 times harder without statutory references. Are local ordinances required?
I can answer that. Yes, an urgency ordinance will be required to enforce an abatement. And again, per your county regulations and the legalities through council and whatnot, however they do it. But yes, in urgency, we have a template for a standard abatement urgency ordinance, or I'm sorry, a emergency health hazardous ordinance that we've given to multiple counties, and they've all used it, made it their own, and then approved by council, and abatements were enforced.
Okay. Marilyn Underwood asks, please share what FEMA OES pays for as far as the environmental health staff time on overseeing the ROE debris removal under the state cleanup model and under the private cleanup method.
So I think so. Let me think if I understand this question correctly. So the standard parcel price it varies dramatically. That is just the average that you could just collectively do over 25,000 houses over the last 4 years. It's ranged anywhere from $100,000 per parcel to $34,000 per parcel. I can't give it, that's just the averages of 50,000 per parcel. Time spent by staff depends on the severity of the complexity of the incident. Time of year. There's a lot of factors. Am I understanding the question correctly? I'm sorry.
Baylor, I think it's more about the time of state and jurisdictional staff within a declaration. So if it's CDA declaration versus federal declaration, how much do they pay for the time of the jurisdictional staff dedicated to the debris mission?
I'd have to look into that, but I can get back to you. I can get the information for you.
Okay. Justin Milan asks, can we make this available to Hawaii? Christine, do you want to answer that?
Sure. I think we definitely could make this available. Also, I think the other document we spoke to, we did send that over to Hawaii in just a draft form. It's a finalized form, but not formatted. So, yes, I think it would be very helpful.
And I would add to that we as state agencies and OES is actually present in Hawaii, and Baylor can talk to that more, but we've been responding to RFIs and providing our expertise as necessary. They're quite inundated with support right now, and so we're trying to be a little bit more thoughtful on responding to requests as needed, and setting them up for success in their phase 1 and phase 2.
Yeah, Heather, you nailed it. Half of our team is out in Hawaii. They have been for the last 3 weeks. So yeah.
Okay.
I think Jason was going to chime in.
No, I think everything, I mean, in addition, just Butte County has also been working through Cal OES and supporting Maui County. So in their experience with the campfire. So there's a lot, and even above just debris removal, sharing documents with debris flow, watershed management, etc. So just wanted to highlight the across the state agencies and local agency support for Hawaii. So thank you.
Yes, and I just want to share that this committee, CCDH, we're working, as Christine said, on that EH guidance for debris management, and we have a shared drive right now. We've been collecting a lot of documents that support that guidance document, as Jason said, because so many counties and jurisdictions have been through wildfires, debris flows, etc. So we actually shared that drive with Jason and John Elkins early on, and the counties are rolling in their documents. So hopefully that will all be uploaded once we get our framing structure up, but right now they have access to those documents. Okay, next question from Brad Richardson. How will fire impacted solar panels and lithium ion batteries be handled? These wastes seem to be bigger challenges to manage. Any guidance documents for these? Thanks. I think it was touched on, but Cal Recycle, Cal OES, Heather, do you want to go ahead and answer that?
I'm actually going to pass this over to Jason and John. They're the ones kind of
Oh
leading
yeah,
the
that's
working
right,
group.
Cal EPA.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, John, Jason.
Okay, well, I can start off on this. Thanks to Heather. So yes, they are a bigger challenge in every manner of speaking. It's a bigger challenge than what we've seen with, especially with wildfires. We, like I said at the beginning of this meeting, we have work groups from DTSC, Cal Recycle, and US EPA and Cal EPA working on what to do with these during the next wildfire event. And it goes from not just how they're handled, but it's also about protecting the people who do the initial assessment, the extra protection for the people assessment, because with lithium ion batteries, they could off-gas a lot of things, including HF. So it's about that. It's also about staging, because they're going to have probably most likely have longer staging events. It's also about containerization, because the container, how to properly container them, they're not as available. And it's about shipping them off, because there's not a lot of facilities that will take, especially when you're talking about lithium ion batteries. And then you're talking about, thermal with lithium ion, you're talking about thermal runaway, and you're talking about there's tests that show that these will go into thermal runaway 21 days after containerization while they're containerized in the proper manner. So, and that brings the transportation issue into it. So the whole thing is a great question, Brad, and we are working on it. And as soon as we get some stuff done, we will send it out. But again, it goes to this emerging technology where, we are trying, this technology has emerged very quickly, and we are trying to catch up on all their emergency response sides. So documents and guidance will definitely be forthcoming. And if you have any incidents before that, please let us know, and we'll try to walk you through the process.
Okay, one question from Mario Kelson. What are the challenges in working with property owners that want to implement their own cleanup? If an owner is unwilling to sign the ROE, but then is slow to complete a cleanup, there may be risks to neighbors, community. What are the next steps if the PPDR has closed?
Great question. This is actually subjective to county enforcement and county timelines for whatever your environmental health director decides on. Typically, we know recovery efforts, cleanups take up to a year, right? So obviously, we're working hard and working fast. Typically, homeowners would like to do it themselves because they think they can do it faster. Sometimes they can. So if they're unwilling to sign an ROE but are slow, you would basically, they would say they would opt to do something called the the alternate program. With that, the county would say, okay, you have 6 months to comply with this order. We need a certified your criteria presented to us in 6 months. Otherwise, an abatement order will be issued for a public nuisance and health. So that's typically the timelines we see is about 6 months, but we do know, again, just depending on the people and the areas, it could be up to a year, but that's up to county enforcement.
And I really want to stress that the ROE process is from county to resident. It's really locally owned. It allows the state to access the property, but it's essentially a form or a contract that's between that resident and that county. So it is the county's responsibility to enforce. And it is also the county's option to expand the window for enrollment, condense the window for enrollment. There are special considerations made all the time. We try to be pretty rigid in how long we allow people to enroll, because it does impact the overall timeline and effectiveness of the mission. But we are considerate of circumstances and situations, and we really let the county drive that for us, or the jurisdiction drive that for us.
Christine, I'm going to call on you because you have direct experience with private and people slow to clean up. Can you elaborate a little bit what you've been through in your county and which fire and how long it's taken to get these properties cleaned up?
I think the best piece of advice I can give anybody is when you write your urgency ordinance that is outlining your private debris removal process, make sure to follow the same timelines as CalRecycle or your public program. And what we've learned throughout this process is if we follow that timeline and we can get to a point where we say, if your property is not cleaned up by the time the public program is going to close, we're going to put you into that program and do it as an abatement. I think that saves a lot of worry right up front and minimizes everything. What we found is through our first fire, we didn't do that. We weren't that stringent. It took us about 2.5 years to clear. Our second fire, we didn't have a public program. That one took another 2.5 years to clear. Our third fire, we had a public program and we were really stringent about anybody who had not started and was saying they were going with private. We were putting them in through abatement into the public program. And then the remaining properties, we immediately started enforcement and abatement. So we were able to clear those properties within a year. So it's really that upfront action that helped in that process.
Thank you. That's it for the questions. Unless someone else, one just popped up. Oh, so thank you. Thank you, Christine, CCDH, and our state partners. We have active fires and need this guidance. Great work.
Right. Well, all I can say is thank you, everybody. I know this is a really difficult time. Everybody's kind of dealing with disasters and such on their own. And I just want to thank everybody for sharing this time with us and, putting together a great workshop. So, going forward, what we will do is we have recorded this, we will post it up to the CCDH website, and then we'll also post the presentations, which will have that contact information and everything available for you. And then please, if there are further questions or that, feel free to go ahead and send them to me and I'll try to get them to the appropriate person. So thank you all, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.